What is going on, everybody? This is the Fourth and Fantasy Podcast, episode 5. My name's Meek. I'm here with my main man, Woo.
What's going on?
It's a great day to talk about Dynasty, am I right?
Always is. Bad weather outside, but fantasy football makes it better.
Of course. So we've been chugging along, going through, putting out our episodes, putting out our clips. Make sure that you're giving us some love on socials and also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Just a quick aside, Boo. We've hit 200 plus plays on all platforms.
It's
crazy. You know what I mean? And we love what we do. We love that you guys love it. So keep the love going so that we can keep this thing going.
Shout out to the viewer in Germany, by the way. We have no idea who you are.
Oh yes, yeah. So I was showing Woo earlier that all of our listeners across the United States, we're a podcast based out of Rhode Island, so we get a lot of Rhode Island people, some Mass, but we got a Germany listener, and shout out to you. You're the real one.
You're the GOAT.
Yeah. So again, follow us on all of our socials: Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy, YouTube we're Fourth and Fantasy, and then comment on our YouTube. I mean, our YouTube and our TikTok and our Instagram. But that leads me to my quick question of the day, where we actually got a comment on our TikTok.
I love this.
Yeah. So this is from 1D Lulo 0, and he's asking. He has Baker and Love and Bryce Young in a 2 quarterback super flex. Who does he keep / trade? I'm gonna kick it to you, Will.
Yeah, this is an interesting question because we've talked about a couple of these guys. So right off the bat, I'm definitely keeping Love 100%. Yeah. I think when you have a quarterback tied to Matt LaFleur, that offense, is always going to be pretty dominant. I hope they give him another receiver, another playmaker for him.
Give him a real receiver.
Yeah, exactly. But I like the steps that I've seen from Love. He looks really calm back there. I think he's only going to get better. And the Packers are always great at, keeping franchise quarterbacks. So I'm definitely saying Love you keep 100%. Even though he didn't really play that well this year, I'm still high on him. Mm-hmm. So we've talked about Baker in our first episode, and my thing for Baker is I don't know how much better he can get. He finishes as the quarterback 4, and I don't really know. I don't think he's a 5,000-yard guy. I don't know if he can keep adding to that unless he starts blowing up with his rushing yards. But I would lean towards trading Baker as high as you can right now. I don't know how much better he can get. Mike Evans is a year older. Not saying that Mike Evans is bad, but that's just one less guy he's going to have in a couple years. In Dynasty, you got to be thinking about the future. It's not just one season. And then also, Chris Godwin, you don't know if he's coming back. And even if he does, he's a little bit older as well. So I'm saying, I'm going to keep Love. And I liked what I saw to Bryce Young. I know you liked what you saw to Bryce Young.
Yeah, I'm all in on him.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to say trade Baker as high as you can. I think you can get the most return out of him.
Yeah. I everything that you echo, is the same thing for me. You trade Baker on, his best season ever, and you get the return that you can because, Baker is the oldest out of I'm pretty sure he's the oldest out of the 3 of these players. Godwin's going as a free agent. You have Jalen McMillan, who, did come on strong, but, can he make that jump and fill that Godwin role in year 2? I don't know. I like Jordan Love. We haven't had a chance to talk about him because he was not in our quarterback series. But I like what Love brings to the table, and I agree. I think bringing in another pass catcher, a year of maturity out of Tucker Kraft, could be huge. And he has Josh Jacobs to hand the ball off. So he's got a stable running back behind him to keep him going. And I don't have to talk anymore about Bryce Young, but like I said, I'm all in on Bryce Young. I think he is someone you want to target going forward in this dynasty offseason. I think I'm with Will, keep Love, keep Young, and then trade Baker.
Yeah. And one last thing, if you're still nervous about Bryce Young going into next year and he's not somebody you're exactly sold on starting, you could be able to get a lower tier quarterback back in this, this theoretical Baker trade, or even like a pick in this draft, and you take a shot on a quarterback.
Absolutely. All right. It is time to get into our year in review series. We're chugging along trying to finish this one out for you guys. You know, obviously the NFL season has just finished up, and you know it is.
Let's go Eagles.
It is, yeah. You know the future pulled through, didn't
Let's
it?
go. Oh yeah, haven't been able
that.
to catch it out. Haven't been out of a round yet, but yeah, it's in there.
Absolutely. But you know, with the NFL season being over, like this is the time of the year that I love. This is dynasty season. You know, and we can't wait to talk about rookies and free agent predictions and all of that stuff. But you know, we're gonna finish up this year in review series for you. So again, we're talking about today wide receivers part 2. If you haven't listened to part 1, go ahead and give that a listen. But today we're gonna go wide receivers 12 to 1. And we're going to give you, you know, where they finished, what their ADP was before the year started, some stats, you know, their fantasy points, maybe some highlight performances, and then just kind of giving you what our, you know, future outlook is, potential dynasty outlook for this player as we move into 2025. So we're going to kick it off with our wide receiver 12, Mr. Jerry Jeudy of the Cleveland Browns. Jerry Jeudy was drafted as wide receiver 56, 240.9 fantasy points, 90 receptions on 145 targets, which is great, 1,229 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jeudy had 3.7 yards per reception, 8.5 yards per target, and an ADOT of 11.1. Now, this is the season that everybody wanted to see out of Jerry Jeudy. You know, Jerry Jeudy was someone who was drafted, I don't know the year, but I know he was the same year as CeeDee Lamb and Henry Ruggs. Yep. But, you know, he was one of those, you know, dynamic Alabama receivers that like everyone was like, this is a surefire bet. And, you know, he definitely struggled through his time in Denver. This past offseason gets traded to Cleveland, you know, and it wasn't anything great to start the first half of the year. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 42.
It's Deshaun Watson for you.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But the same thing with Amari Cooper last year is the same thing you see with Jerry Jeudy. You know, Watson gets hurt week 7. You know, Jameis comes in. You have a mix of Jameis and DTR, but, you know, Jeudy pulls out and is the second half of the year, he's the wide receiver 7. You know, so and after the bye, which was week 10 for them, you know, he became the focal point of the offense. You know, he was 6th in fantasy points, 7th in targets, 5th in yards, and 5th in receptions and 3rd in yards. You know what I mean? Like that's insane.
Absolutely.
So what do you got, Woo, for Jerry Jeudy?
Yeah, like you touched on already, you know, he was drafted 15th for a reason. He was a big, you know, prospect coming out of college, and this second half of the season is exactly why. They do need to address the quarterback position really bad. Watson is just not the answer at all. I think we can finally say this.
And there's a potential that Watson's not even going to play next year because he retore his Achilles. So
that whole
might be
situation's a mess.
Oh,
it's
my God,
a complete mess. I'm glad I don't get paid enough to figure that whole thing out. But yeah, they need an answer at quarterback. You know, we have in our notes, like, are they a team that ends up drafting one at the 2nd overall pick? Do they go Carter or Travis Hunter and just try and get another playmaker on their team? I think for Judy's purposes, we saw it with Winston already. Like, bring him back, let Winston throw the ball. I mean, it's if you're gonna lose, which at this point I think you need to keep losing and pick high in the first round. Let Jameis Winston do it for you, because he will air it out and he will make losing fun.
Yeah. He makes it fun for fantasy football, you know, of all things, you know. So the thing with Jerry Jeudy is, you know, is he going to be valuable in 2025? I know you just mentioned like the quarterback is the huge, you know, position, but you know he's going to be 26. Like it's not like he's hitting like 28, 29 where you're like you need to get out. Like he's a young guy.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't great in the red zone. You know, had 13 targets for only 1 touchdown. But like, you know, we talk about future outlook for Jerry Jeudy, and like the quarterback position is the big thing.
Yeah, it's difficult to have an answer right now with that unknown.
Of course, you know what I mean? And it's, you know, obviously they have the potential to draft a QB. My personal opinion is I don't think you do, because it's a subpar QB draft class. You know, the franchise has not been good at taking quarterbacks. I think they have 40-something different starting quarterbacks.
Something insane.
You know, so and all that together is just a recipe for disaster. But I will say, and I know I haven't put this in the doc, so I'm going to run this by you, Will.
Okay.
What if Aaron Rodgers comes to town in Cleveland?
I want to sit here and say like, oh, that could be good, but I mean, he was just. It's bad. So let me say it this way. So Rodgers, in terms of like a Jets quarterback this year, had like the best season in recent memory.
Like you look at it, it wasn't that bad. Like
it wasn't.
He had it was like 3,800 yards and like 20 plus touchdowns. Like he was not awful. You know?
He had a good second half of the year. Like there was just that middle part of the season where he just looked like lost.
Right.
But Rodgers in Cleveland, oh man. I mean, it would definitely make me happier about Judy.
It's not a long-term thing. So like my thought process behind even thinking about this is that, you're like Cleveland has never been good at picking quarterbacks. You have someone like Rodgers who is looking for a home, and he's going to give you 1, maybe 2 years, and that gives you a 2-year gap or a 2-year window, to roll with Rodgers, and then you start grooming somebody in the QB room to be your future quarterback, and I think that's all positive for Jerry Jeudy because then honestly I see it as an upgrade, but obviously it's February 16th, as the time we're recording this, and the new league year hasn't started, but I want to throw that what if out to people just in case.
The thing with Rodgers, let's say he does go to Cleveland and he likes Jeudy, like he will force feed him the ball. Rodgers, if he likes somebody, you will get the ball.
Absolutely.
So that could be a good positive.
Right. So all right, we're gonna move into wide receiver 11. Wide receiver 11, Davante Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders, then the New York Jets. Finishes as the wide receiver, or is drafted as the wide receiver 10, finishes as the wide receiver 11. 241.3 fantasy points, 85 receptions on 141 targets, 1,063 yards and 8 touchdowns. He had 12.5 yards per reception, 7.5 yards per target, and he had an ADOT of 8.2. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 43, and that was kind of that time where he was with the Raiders, and it was an abysmal season. You have Aiden O'Connell, you have Gardner Minshew throwing the ball, and you're just not seeing anything, working. And then he, in between week 6 and week 7, he gets traded to New York, to the Jets, paired with Aaron Rodgers, and he finishes as the wide receiver 6. Definitely in the first half of the year, Adams was someone who continuously hurt you.
Big time.
4 out of 5 games, he's outside the top 38. And then he was hurt weeks 4 through 5. And then after the bye and after he got traded, that was the Davante Adams you knew and loved. 5 out of the 6 weeks, he was a top 20 wide receiver. He was a number 1 wide receiver finish in week 15 at age 32. You know what I mean? Which is insane. But as I also mentioned, age 32, like how much does Davante Adams have left in the tank, Woo?
It can't be much, and I would like to think that wherever Rodgers goes, Davante Adams is going to follow. I don't see the Jets holding on to him, especially with like the rumors of like if Davante sticks around, Garrett Wilson's going to want out. Give me Garrett Wilson 11 times out of 10 over Davante Adams, which might sound insane to say, but like he's still young. You get the rookie money still, and there's not Davante Adams. Like I think he follows Rodgers wherever he goes. And he might be one of those guys that if he's going to stick with Rodgers and Rodgers loves him, like they
have that connection.
Do you kind of just ride with it and see what happens? I don't know what you can really get for Davante Adams at this point, especially right now.
Oh yeah.
With all the questions behind it, so I think he might just hold him.
Yeah, I think obviously Woo's talking dynasty, and I'm thinking redraft. He could be a interesting wide receiver 2 for your team if he does stick with Rodgers and wherever Rodgers goes, and because that baked in connection is right there, so there's always going to be fantasy value for him, right? And he is 32, and when we talk about age in terms of redraft, it doesn't matter that much. It's like what are they going to do right then and now in that season? And Davante Adams gave you flashes at the end of this past season that he still got it. And gives you a wide receiver 1 finish, which is great to see.
In redraft, if you have like one of those like let's say like 3 to 6 in that first round. And you hit on like a Jamar Chase or Jefferson, depending on, where those guys are going. But let's say you get one of those guys and then coming back and Davante Adams is sitting there and he still has kind of a high ADP. I wouldn't be upset.
I love that combo too.
Yeah, like if there's anyone to take a shot on, and I don't even know if it would be considered taking a shot depending on the situation, but right. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah. All right. Wide receiver 10, Jackson Smith-Njigba of the Seattle Seahawks. Jackson Smith-Njigba was drafted as the wide receiver 45, finishes as the wide receiver 10, which is great to see. 251.6 fantasy points, 100 receptions on 137 targets, 1,130 yards, 6 touchdowns, 11.3 yards per reception, 8.2 yards per target, and he's got an ADOT of 8.6. First half of the year he was the wide receiver 14. Second half of the year he was the wide receiver 8, where he really came on, and this is what you needed to see out of Jackson Smith-Njigba this year. Obviously he was his rookie year last year was very lackluster. I attribute that to a lot of, I believe the offensive coordinator was Shane Waldron, who was there.
Yeah.
A lot of throws behind the line of scrimmage. They didn't get him out in open spaces down the field. And then Ryan Grubb comes in, this year and really spreads out the whole offense. And you see Jackson Smith-Njigba really shine.
Yeah, no, I love JSN. He was somebody I traded for in redraft in the middle of the year. And I liked what I got out of him. I ended up having to trade him away again to you.
Yep.
So you had him in 2 leagues. So you definitely have a better stance on him as performance wise throughout the year. But I think Geno Smith really didn't play that well this year. Especially with the year he had the season before. But I really like JSN as the player himself. And I think he really only has room to get better. And I think, DK Metcalf, I don't know. I'm still waiting
Talking about trading him.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still waiting for DK Metcalf to have that, dominant, this is my team. Mm-hmm. And I just don't think that's happening in Seattle.
Yeah. I can sit here and probably, gush about JSN all day long. Like Wu said, I traded for him late in redraft. I have him in Dynasty as a JSN manager. I am very pleased with what I've seen and how he's kind of burst onto the scene. Tyler Lockett is becoming a free agent, and honestly Tyler Lockett is being phased out of that offense because of how old he is. So I only see more opportunity for JSN when he comes in, comes back next year. This year he had a 24% target share, had 7 top 24 finishes, which is everything that you love to see in him. But the caveat here is, the Seahawks fired Ryan Grubb. Whatever your opinion is on it, Ryan Grubb was great for JSN, and obviously the Seahawks wanted to run the football more and not be as spread out. And then here comes Clint Kubiak to come into this offense, and so it could be a struggle with it. Clint Kubiak, his system is very similar to a 49ers Kyle Shanahan, where it's run the football, we're efficient on the pass, and working off of play action. So then, my wonder is, does he get the same number of touches as he did last year, right?
Yeah.
He had 100 receptions, which is great to see.
Yeah.
But the thing is, with all that taken in, I'm in. You know what I mean? I'm in on JSN. Even if they trade Metcalf, because the whole reason why the talk of Metcalf even being traded is because he's got 1 year left on his deal.
Right.
So they're trying to get out in front of it and trade him away. So regardless, if Metcalf gets traded this year or becomes a free agent next year, it's JSN. He's going to get force-fed targets.
Absolutely. And when he was in college, he was a huge name. He dominated at Ohio State. So, the talent is obviously there. And I think he can be someone who can, be that alpha wide receiver 1 on a team by himself.
Absolutely. Obviously, I think the other thing going forward too is he's going to need a better quarterback. Geno Smith's not going to cut it.
No.
I don't know if Seattle's someone who's targeting a quarterback in this draft, or are they waiting till next year to target a quarterback?
I think you let it ride one more year with Geno.
I think so too, which is good too, because he's got that connection with Geno, already, because he's been with him for 2 years. But,
yeah, and you're not competing for really anything next year. I mean, you almost snuck into the playoffs, but you're not one of those top tier contenders.
Right.
So just keep what you got and see what happens in the draft next year.
Dynasty outlook. What do you think? Is JSN someone that you are trying to target? Do you think you can target him? What do you think?
I think if you want to, I really like him. I don't know if you would be someone who's willing to give him up. So that's a whole another conversation. But if you are looking to go after him, do it soon, before this QB change happens. Because I think his price is only going to keep going up.
I would agree. All right. Wide receiver 9, Mr. G5, Garrett Wilson.
The man.
Drafted as the wide receiver 7, finishes as the wide receiver 9, 251.9 fantasy points, 101 receptions on 154 targets, 1,104 yards, 7 touchdowns, had a 10.9 yard per reception, 7.2 yards per target, and an ADOT of 9. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 2, which is everything that everyone has ever wanted from G5. And then second half of the year, he takes a tumble with, Davante Adams coming into town and drops to the wide receiver 24. But it is his highest finish ever, wide receiver 9. And that's what everyone's been wanting for, almost very similar to JSN, but Garrett Wilson's been in the league for an extra year, but 26% target share is beautiful. 23 red zone targets, got force fed in the red zone. In the first half he was a stud. Weeks 5 through 9 he was a top 20 wide receiver every single week. And then obviously that second half is really killed you. But again, my resident Jet fan, Woo. What do you got for G5?
If you showed me this document where we have Garrett Wilson as the 9th overall fantasy wide receiver and Davante Adams end up being traded to the Jets and him sitting at 11, and I'm looking at them both being in the top 12, I'm like, oh, the Jets had a killer year. Like, this is awesome. Yeah. This is exactly what I wanted. But, of course, in a typical Jets fashion, it couldn't be any further from the truth. But aside from my Jets complaints, like, I love Garrett Wilson. If, like I said earlier, if when Rodgers is gone now, thank God. I was so sick of that situation. But when the rumors were coming out, like, oh, the Jets pick Rodgers, if that's the case, then Wilson wants out. I want Garrett Wilson on this team. I hope that the ownership doesn't screw this up, because that catch against Houston is why you have him on your team.
Yes,
that is why you drafted him. Like, he is a dog. I don't really care about the whole alpha thing. He can't perform by himself. I just think that first half of the year when he was the only guy, it was just target. Like, he was getting everything, and the Jets offense as a whole, it just wasn't clicking yet. So they bring in Davante Adams thinking that's going to be the Band-Aid that fixes everything, and of course it wasn't. But I love Garrett Wilson. I want him on this team as long as possible, and I think in terms of being on a dynasty roster, I would not give him up. I still think there's another level to this game that the Jets just can't unlock, and I really hope they do. They bring in Aaron Glenn, and I'm blanking on the new offensive coordinator's name, of course, but he was the passing game coordinator in Detroit, so he's worked with Glenn before, and obviously, passing game in Detroit hasn't been all that bad as of late, so I really hope that these new coaching changes and play callers, add this next level to Garrett Wilson, because I think he is capable of doing it.
Being a Jet fan aside, do you think that Garrett Wilson is going to be that elite receiver we've always wanted him to be? Because when we think about it, like a couple of years ago, like before he had this season, he was being treated as like a top 5 dynasty wide receiver, and obviously he's gone through multiple quarterbacks. He's never had a really good quarterback until Rodgers, and when he does have it, he's got 1,100 yards and 7 touchdowns. But Rodgers is gone now. There's a question mark at QB, and it's like, is he someone who, regardless of quarterback, is he going to ball, or what is G5 for him?
He's someone that really demands targets, and he should. He is so shifty. He could catch a ball maybe 5 yards, past the line of scrimmage, and he is just so quick and shifty. He can make dudes miss. He's not the biggest guy, but he's super quick, and his routes are insane, and he's got great hands, obviously. Putting the Jets thing aside, I guess if we were going to, the whole thing with the early, first half of the year was all right, this is his time to be that one, that big dog alpha on the field. And, I think I think he's capable of it, and I just think the Jets find a way to screw it up.
Yeah. You hate to see it, but we'll see. I'm hoping good things for him in the future, but
I still really like him.
Absolutely, I like him too. You know what I mean? I think he's he's a dynamic player. It's just can we get this guy a QB and something stable?
Right.
But we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of stable QBs, wide receiver 8. Now we're going to move on. Is Mr. CeeDee Lamb, drafted as the wide receiver 2, finishes as the wide receiver 8. Seems a little upsetting, obviously, with the way you drafted him, but this guy didn't have Dak Prescott. He's 263.4 fantasy points, 101 receptions on 152 targets, 1,194 yards and 6 touchdowns. Are you kidding me?
Right.
First half of the year he was a wide receiver 4. Second half of the year he was a wide receiver 17. I am here to tell you that CeeDee Lamb is a stud no matter who, like, he is in that, like, I think of like DeAndre Hopkins, like when he was in his prime. Like, it didn't matter who his quarterback was, he's gonna ball, and that's who CeeDee Lamb is now. He gave you only 4 bad weeks, which is insane for a wide receiver, right? We talk about wide receiver, finishes, and wide receivers are the ones who vary the most. Like, they'll give you a wide receiver 3 week, but then give you a wide receiver like 50 week. It happens. It's fantasy football, but the fact that you could rely on CeeDee Lamb to give you a good week every single week except for 4 is amazing. He was never below a top 24 wide receiver. He had a 24% target share, all without Dak. Like, CeeDee Lamb's a stud.
Yeah, it hurts, especially because he's just coming off a wide receiver 1 season. I am somebody who traded for him coming in last offseason with the 101 pick between me and you.
Yep.
And I can sit here right now and say I'm very happy I did it. I want to see Dak Prescott back. It gives Lamb that just like extra like level to his, potential out on the field. If he can do what he just did with Cooper Rush, he can do it, like you said, with literally anybody.
Absolutely. So again, concerns definitely about the Dak injury. I know, I think what Dak had was a hamstring injury, and it was like he pulled the whole muscle off the bone. Yeah. So obviously I am concerned about that going forward. I hope that the Dallas Cowboys are understanding of that, and I believe Dak is like 34 or 32, something like that. If you could check that for me, Woo. He's not getting any younger, and I think they need to really start considering who the next quarterback for CeeDee Lamb is going forward, because like, you got to keep this guy. Obviously he's under contract, but like, you got to keep this guy happy, because if you start trotting out, the Cooper Rushes and the Trey Lances of the world, like he's going to get upset, and I wouldn't be shocked if he asked for a trade.
Yeah. So he's 31. But I just think Jerry Jones is like in love with Dak, and I don't know if he goes anywhere. Even if he does request a trade, Jerry Jones might say like, you're stuck in Dallas, dude. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't know. I hope, because it's so frustrating when you see like elite studs that just don't get supported, and they don't have just like the necessary talent to just make them be that elite alpha guy. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I'm looking at Dynasty startup rankings, and Jamar Chase has Joe Burrow. Yep. That is why he's the the number 1 asset in a Dynasty startup. Next is Justin Jefferson, who is another guy we're going to talk about later, who is an absolute stud, who can do it with any QB. And then Lamb sits there. I think like if you get someone steady, he could jump Jefferson, or string some elite years together where like he's the main guy you want in Dynasty. I don't know. We'll see.
As a Lamb manager, I want Dak back. They have that rapport already. And I don't really care about how the Cowboys do in terms of NFL success. So, give me Dak. He loves Lamb. They have a really good connection, and he's just a wide receiver 1 with him. So I want Dak back.
Yeah, perfect. Moving into wide receiver 7. Wide receiver 7 is Terry McLaurin of the Washington Commanders. Again, another finally. Drafted as the wide receiver 32. Finishes the wide receiver 7. 267.8 fantasy points. 82 receptions on 117 targets, 1,096 yards, 13 touchdowns, 13.4 yards per reception, 9.4 yards per target, and an ADOT of 13.3. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 7. Second half of the year was the wide receiver 20. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you this year's DJ Moore. We've talked about, McLaurin getting, finally stepping into that elite wide receiver tier. Obviously, Moore did it last year, with Justin Fields of all people.
Yeah.
But, Jaden Daniels, comes into town, and, I know there were question marks and fears of Terry McLaurin. Like, I'm someone in the past, so I've taken Terry McLaurin in redraft leagues, and I've been utterly disappointed. And, this year, it was a rookie quarterback. Obviously we knew Daniels was good, but like I wasn't in on McLaurin, and, he proved me wrong.
Yeah, so I'm double checking right now, but I'm like 99% sure when we did our startup, Terry McLaurin was on my team, and I'm pretty sure I traded him. I'm double checking that right now. But in talking about this year, shout out Terry McLaurin for the loyalty, man. Like he could have said, "Get me out of here" years ago, but he stuck around.
Yep.
And when people do this, like, you get rewarded, and I'm really happy for him. Yeah. Really, the only like negative thing I have for him is like he's kind of old, but not really. It's like that kind of like when you get to like the 28, 29, like that age range, it's like, all right, like I should start thinking about his age. But I don't say like, I'm not saying trade him tomorrow.
Yeah. But, obviously he was super consistent. He only had 4 bad weeks. And then every other week he gave you, he was a top 24 wide receiver. He had 10 red zone touchdowns, which is great. But the thing I want to highlight, just like Wu said, right now he's 29.4 years old. He's going to be 30 at the start of next year, and he's in the last year of his deal is going to be next year in 2026. So this could be an opportunity for you to trade high and get the maximum return right now on Terry McLaurin. Maybe not now, because obviously, a couple episodes ago we talked about some dynasty trade tips, and like obviously this is the time of year where it's very low for veteran players. I'll tell you when the best time to trade Terry McLaurin is. The best time to trade Terry McLaurin is going to be the first 4 weeks of the year, because that Washington is going to come out swinging and Terry McLaurin's going to have a couple of spike weeks. That is your opportunity to trade and get your maximum return. Trading Terry McLaurin, I don't know what his value currently sits at, but I will find that for you and let you know. But that would be the most opportune time to trade him.
Yeah, I agree with that. We'll also have to see what they do in free agency, if they bring in another receiver, if they draft somebody. If they draft somebody, I don't know where they're sitting pick wise, but I haven't seen them like super high getting those like big time wide receiver names.
Yep.
So I'll say if they draft somebody and they bring in a rookie, I'm definitely keeping McLaurin. If they go out and get a big name like T. Higgins or Chris Godwin or someone along those lines, I'm definitely a little more nervous about Terry McLaurin going into next year.
So question for you, Will. I just looked it up. So Terry McLaurin's being valued right now as the pick 110 in rookie drafts. Would you rather have Terry McLaurin or the 110?
I'll answer it this way because it is situational based on your team. So we've talked about this in previous episodes. Like, it's a deep running back class. You can get some really good running backs in that like 108 1 to like 111 spot.
Yep.
So if I'm weak at running back, I want that 110 pick. But if I'm set at running back and I need somebody who can go out and ball and be tied to somebody as dynamic as Jaden Daniels, give me Terry McLaurin every day of the week.
And that's right now. I wonder also, like how I was putting the scenario for everyone, like if you wait until the first 4 weeks of the year, you probably could get, a 2026 first plus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like a 2026 plus a young receiver like Trey Harris or like Io Maynor or, someone like that. So then you get an extra first round pick for next year, and you got younger at the position, while trading away, someone like Terry McLaurin.
Yes.
Moving into our wide receiver 6. Wide receiver 6 is Malik Neighbors. Drafted as the wide receiver 23, finishes as the wide receiver 6. 273.6 fantasy points, 109 receptions on 170 targets, 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns. He had 7.1 yards per target, 11.1 yards per catch, and an ADOT of 9.5. First half of the year, Neighbors was the wide receiver 13. Second half of the year, he was the wide receiver 10. And I'm going to sit here and tell you that, what Malik Neighbors gave you is probably the most disappointingly impressive wide receiver 6 finish I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it really makes no sense. But he's like, he's just that good.
Yeah.
He's such a dog.
I think, obviously, dynasty-wise, you're happy with what you got because you got an alpha stud.
I tried trading for him. The guy laughed at me pretty much.
Yeah. But in redraft, I think you were not happy with what you got out of Neighbors. I had Neighbors in a redraft league, and obviously you look at his box scores. The first 4 weeks. First week was a dud, wide receiver 32, but then he was wide receiver 3, wide receiver 5, wide receiver 6, and you're sitting there, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah, 18 targets, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, like this guy is just going to go to the moon. And then he had the concussion, so he was out for 2 weeks, and then you start to see a little bit of the downward spiral. He's got a wide receiver 43 finish, wide receiver 38, and it's you kind of like churning the wheels. And I think the way he became valuable in the second half of the year is just they targeted this man like no other.
As they should, because he is LSU is wide receiver U. Absolutely. Like, we're going to talk about another guy, same draft class, LSU. Like, it's just insane. get this guy a quarterback, please, like Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward. I don't
Yes,
care who it is,
someone.
either one of those two, and you will be very happy with Malik Neighbors.
I was gonna say in my future outlook, I put he needs a QB like he needs there.
Yeah.
Like this guy, we need to get him somebody.
Otherwise, just a waste of talent.
Right. But it is promising that he can produce and give you a wide receiver 6 season with the amalgamation of Daniel Jones and Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. Like he's able to
So gross.
to do it. I did say in Dynasty, this might be the lowest that you're able to buy him right now if you could.
Yeah.
And if you have any chance to get Malik Neighbors, you do that now.
Yeah.
Just like Wu said, we're in the same dynasty league with the manager that has Malik Neighbors. I tried to make a run at him, and it wasn't nowhere close. And rightfully so, because he's a dog.
I don't remember what the offer I sent was, but even when I sent it, I was like, "Ooh, this might be a lot. Like, am I really about to send this?" And I still sent it. He said no. I was like, I'm not even mad at that. I'll give you that.
Absolutely. All right. Wide receiver 5. Wide receiver 5 is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. Drafted as wide receiver 11, finishes as the wide receiver 5. 280.8 fantasy points, 100 receptions on 158 targets, 1,271 yards, 9 touchdowns. He had 8.04 yard per target, 12.7 yard per catch, and an 8 out of 10.8. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 5. And you were definitely thought that was very promising with Kirk Cousins and, thinking that he's finally breaking out and this is the Drake London that we've been hoping to see. As the year goes on, Cousins fizzles out. And then, obviously towards the, so in the back half of the year, he was the wide receiver 29, but, there were a couple of weeks at the end of the year where he was with Penix that was very, very promising to see. I don't know if week 16 against the Giants he was with Penix or if it was just 17 and 18, but it was definitely 17 and 18 with Penix.
And you look at those target numbers.
I was just about to say 13 targets, 18 targets. Like that's lovely. That's exactly what you want to see.
Yeah.
But 9 touchdowns feels like a sweet spot, so you shouldn't be worried about much of a touchdown regression. 29% target share is lovely.
That's such a good sign.
Awesome.
Such a good sign.
And like I said before, you had 2 solid weeks with Penix. So, what do you think we can expect from Drake London going into next year, Will?
I really like him. If I'm somebody who has him, I'm really happy, and I think he can build that relationship with Penix. I think Penix can be a solid quarterback in the league. We really haven't seen much of him, but I really liked what I saw when he was in Washington. But London is going to be London's performance is reliant on what Penix gives him.
I was going to say he goes as Penix goes.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the season that we really wanted out of Drake London. Even when Kirk Cousins fell off the face of the earth, he still found a way to finish in the top 5. I would just say going into next year, it might take a couple weeks. If you get to the bye week and it's still kind of shaky, don't be surprised. And so building off of that, I will say next year, pay attention to Drake London, see what the Penix situation looks like. And if it's pretty shaky and rocky, go get that guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Cause he's a stud. You look at, I wonder if I have his, no, I don't have his combine numbers, but he's 6'4", 215 and catches everything.
Massive.
He's awesome.
Massive.
So yeah, let's do a quick dive at Keep Trade Cut. We're gonna look at some trades with my man Drake London. We'll see what you're thinking. I have for you. Let's get some easy ones. Drake London for Jonathan Taylor and a 26 first round pick.
Ooh.
What side do you take on that?
Drake London for Taylor and the first?
Taylor and a 26 first.
Wow. I'd have to look at what the 26 draft class looks like. But I'm going to say I really, if you can get a running back like Jonathan Taylor and a first round pick, that might be tough to decline. I think I'm going to go Jonathan Taylor in the first.
Next one I have for you, Drake London for the 103 and the 106 in this year's draft.
Ooh. Wow.
So, obviously, I can throw picks out, but let's, early mocks, this is where they slot in.
McMillan, Travis Hunter.
Yep, Travis Hunter, I think is slotted in right now as the 103 or And then the 106,
Cam Ward's in that section.
Yep.
Luther Burden, who I really like.
Yep. Emeka Ibuka.
Ooh, wow.
You know what I mean? So what do you think?
That's a situation where you can like really smash some of these early guys in like a really talented like first half of the first round.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't know if I would send that trade. Like if I'm trying to go get London, I feel like that's a lot.
It is, but like he showed you at the end of the year though that he put up like a 40-point week though.
Yeah.
Like I could see it. I think me personally, I am on the 2 first-round pick side. Because you can get someone like you can get an elite running back like Omarion Hampton.
Yeah, we didn't even touch on a running back.
I was going to say, and spin it with the 106 and either get another running back. You could get Tyler Warren. You could get Emeka Ibuka. So I would say if you're someone who has London and another stud wide receiver, I go make that trade.
Yeah, I agree with that completely.
And then last one I have for you, because this one's kind of spicy. I like this one. This is a 1 quarterback league, by the way. Okay. Drake London and Jordan Addison for the 101 and the 201.
I would want Drake London and Addison in that.
Yeah, I think I do too.
Yeah.
Just because
the one like Genty's nasty, but the Addison on top of that is why I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Moving into our wide receiver 4, Mr. Brian Thomas, picked as the wide receiver 47, finishes as the wide receiver 4, 284 fantasy points, 87 receptions on 133 targets, 1,282 yards, 10 touchdowns. He had a 9.6 yard per target, 14.74 yard per catch, and an ADOT of 11.5. I just want to come out in front and say this is your keeper in the Bonnet Shores Fantasy Football League,
totally
Steve Engel. First half, he was the wide receiver 11. Second half, he was the wide receiver 9. Just like Boo said when we were talking about Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas hails from LSU, and LSU is just the wide receiver university.
Yeah,
undoubtedly. Obviously shaky in the first half of the year, and really not really because he was the wide receiver 11. But you do start to see a common theme in fantasy seasons where after the bye, rookie wide receivers really get more involved.
Yes, and double-digit targets every game after the bye.
Right, and he had 2 top 5 finishes with Mac Jones. Yeah. Like Mac Jones, are we serious?
Yeah, right.
So he didn't have T-Law from week 10 on, 25% target share. I'm all over Brian Thomas. I don't know about you, Will.
Yeah, especially bringing in Liam Cohen. I think arrows pointing up for Jacksonville. We talked about how he did this with Mac Jones. He hasn't even gotten a full year out of Trevor Lawrence yet. So that'll be really fun to see next year. He is untouchable in Dynasty, in my opinion. If I have him there, you got to send me the Brinks truck, man. Like, I don't know if there's really a package I'm giving up for this guy.
Yeah. I'm definitely a little concerned on the quarterback play, and obviously he showed you that he can do it with someone like Mac Jones. But I am not a Trevor Lawrence believer. I think he does struggle as a passer at times, and I really hope that he can keep up this target share for BTJ going forward. But no, I agree with you. He's an untouchable asset. He's a phenomenal athlete. He just goes insane. Like, I'm looking right now after the bye week. I'm just going to read off his targets to the end of the year. 10, 12, 14, 13, 10, 11. Like, that's everything that you want to see in an alpha wide receiver.
100%.
So we'll see what the future holds for Mr. BTJ.
The only thing that, like, I wouldn't even call it a concern. Concern's not the right word, but I'll use it. So they bring in Liam Cohen. Is this where we start to see, like, Travis Etienne and oh my God, Tank Bigsby?
Yeah.
Is that where do we start to see them starting to get worked back into this offense because their running game was non-existent?
But I also think that complements what you're hoping for BTJ though, because obviously he was a rookie, so nobody really had any film on him, and he was able to kind of burst on the scene and be this dynamic talent. But now you have a year under your belt, who T-Law is probably going to now if you incorporate a competent running game with ETN or even just some dump offs out of the backfield, that takes heat off of Brian Thomas Jr., and he could be just as good if not better than this past year.
Yeah, And they have that 5th pick. I'm looking at mocks real quick right now, and it looks
Yeah.
like they're probably going to go the defensive side of the ball. So I'm not sure if anything will really affect Brian Thomas Jr. in that aspect.
I was gonna say there's nothing really that worries me. You know what I mean? I don't see them going another receiver. You know, they could take a tight end later on in the draft, but again, they have Evan Ingram. You know, he just had a down year. But you know, I don't think there's anything draft wise or even, you know, free agent wise. I didn't even check what their cap space situation is.
They should have money to spend.
So
just going off the top of my head.
Right. So maybe that is something that you could be worried about. But I wouldn't.
Yeah, and it really isn't like a loaded free agent class anyways. So I don't see them going after like Higgins or anything like that.
No. All right. Moving into our wide receiver 3, Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown, drafted as the wide receiver 5. 311.9 fantasy points, 115 receptions on 141 targets, 1,263 yards, 12 touchdowns, 8.9 yard per target, 10.98 yard per catch, and an 8 out of 7.8. First half of the year, he was the wide receiver 10. Second half of the year, he was the wide receiver 2. So he got better as the year went on for you. You know, I am dubbing Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown is Mr. Consistent.
You ever seen that clip of Shea Gilgeous-Alexander? He's like, my whole life is consistent.
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is that clip.
That's absolutely. He is what I hoped Keenan Allen would be. Like I'm willing to sit here and tell you that he's probably better than Keenan Allen.
Yeah.
You know, but he's everything that he reminds me so much of Keenan Allen.
He's always in the right spot. Always.
You know, he had a couple of bad weeks, but his good weeks were elite. You know what I mean? Like, you know, week 11 against Jacksonville, he's the wide receiver 1. Week 15 against Buffalo, he's the wide receiver 3. You know, like he's an elite talent. You know what I mean? 27% target share, you know, with this offense and someone like, you know, think about the targets that Jared Goff has to throw to. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown, but then you have Jameson Williams, who came on strong. You have Sam Laporta. You have Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield, you know, and he gives you a 27% target share. Like, that's things you love to see, you know, and I haven't even got to this point, 32 red zone targets. Like 32 is insane. You know, future outlook for Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's definitely a top 5 wide receiver potential every single year. My question for you, Woo, is in a dynasty startup, where would you take? Here, I'll give you a couple of names. I got to find them. Would you rather have Amon-Ra or Puka Nacua?
Amon-Ra.
Would you rather have Amon-Ra or Nico Collins?
Amon-Ra.
Would you rather have Amon-Ra or the man we just talked about, Brian Thomas Jr.?
Ooh, Amon-Ra.
Really?
Yeah, Amon-Ra. Okay. Yeah, he is a dog.
Amon-Ra or Malik Neighbors? Yeah, we're starting to get spicy now.
Okay. It's the 3 less years, or now would be like 2 more years that he has on a rookie deal, that Malik Neighbors has on a rookie deal.
Yep.
In terms of like, you know, how that team will be able to build around him. But Amon-Ra's situation is like, it's so perfect for him. Like Jared Goff, I don't know how many more years we'll get out of him, but I would think enough to be.
I was gonna say, I believe they're still connected for the next 4 years.
Oh wow, okay, that's a lot longer than I thought. So yeah, dynasty start, I'm going Amon-Ra. I think it's Amon-Ra across the board there.
Right. So we're, you know, and then so he's slotting in the wide receiver 4 right behind CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I saw CeeDee Lamb ahead of him, and yeah, I'm not even mad at that. I'm not mad at that.
I was gonna say, are you gonna test
I love
it?
CeeDee.
so wide receiver 4, right? So, you know, he's an elite talent. You know, and speaking of elite talents, we're moving into our wide receiver 2, Justin Jefferson of the Minnesota Vikings. My man, love Justin Jefferson. Drafted as wide receiver 3, 316.6 fantasy points, 103 receptions on 154 targets, 1,533 yards, 10 touchdowns, you know, 9.95 yards per target, 14.48 yards per catch. Justin Jefferson he's the best wide receiver in the league. That's all I have to say, really. Go ahead, Will.
Yeah, so first off, I want to say, you know, me and Malik worked together. We worked at Bon Shores Beach Club. We're in a redraft league. It's keeper league.
Yep.
All 12 of the guys, we all worked there. And my first year joining the league was, I think it was like 4 years ago now.
Mm-hmm.
I remember exactly where I was. It was our last year on ESPN. Thank God we switched to Sleeper.
Yes.
But we're sitting there.
Shout out to Sleeper.
Yeah. So we're sitting there, and I don't remember what round you got Jefferson. I think it was like the 12th round.
Yep.
And it's that round comes around, and you're picking before me. I'm like, yeah, this Justin Jefferson guy, like, he looks really cool. Like, you know, he was awesome in college. Like, another LSU guy. So I'm sitting there. I'm like, oh, you know what? Like, I'll take a shot on him. Like, I don't really know much about him. I was still getting into fantasy at that point. I was like, yeah, let me take a shot. And you take him, and then just because it's a keeper league, you're getting him in the 12th round, the 9th round, the 6th round, and the 3rd round. Like, come on, man. It's terrorized.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to know, obviously you see the Fantasy League Championship belt here in the cubby. I think we've had this belt now for 5 years. 4 out of the 5 years, your boy has won this league, and 3 out of those 5 years, Justin Jefferson was the one who carried me to it, and he's just a straight dog. There's not much to say about him. You know, he had a few bad weeks in the middle of the season, but like what he gave you as a wide receiver too, with Sam Darnold is everything for you. You know, it's everything for you. Like, everyone was concerned that, oh, he's got Sam Darnold, he doesn't have Cousins anymore. Can he still be that elite target? 30% target share.
I was gonna say, I don't care who you got when you have a 30% target share.
10 touchdowns, ties a career high, and has 2 seasons. Only 2 seasons under 100 receptions. You know, last season when he only played 10 games, and his rookie season. Every year other than that, 100 receptions.
In my opinion, he's the best receiver in the NFL. Like, if you want to say him and Chase, 1A, 1B, sure.
Yeah.
I have him as the best receiver in the NFL. He's only 25. He's going to be the first or second wide receiver off the board every single year, redraft or dynasty. And then going into dynasty, you know, to me, he's untouchable, but we've seen him traded.
Yeah. So again, we're in a dynasty league as well, you know, and obviously we wanted to share with you some things that happened in our dynasty league. But during the year, we have the date stamp, October 2nd, 2024. You see Nick Mullins. Stick with me, folks. Nick Mullins, Justin Jefferson, Dalton Kincaid, and J.J. McCarthy get traded to one manager, and the other manager sends over Jacoby Brissett, Jamar Chase, Jahmyr Gibbs, Drake May, and a 26 first-round pick. Obviously, the side of the, you know, Chase, Gibbs, May,
and the first round pick
is a fleece. But you know, it's crazy when you see talents like Jefferson, Chase, and Gibbs all get traded in one trade.
Yeah, I remember when it came through, it hurt my brain. I couldn't even look at it for the first couple minutes. I had to see some reactions and then go back and see what I was actually reading. Even looking at it now, it still hurts my head. I saw the vision where, you know, you want to have that stack with McCarthy and Jefferson. I get that for the future, and you get Kincaid, which we still haven't seen enough out of him. Yeah. So hopefully you get something out of him soon.
And that leads into my other question: is J.J. McCarthy enough to support Justin Jefferson?
That's what I mean. Like, when we talked about Darnold and what the Vikings are going to do, how off of what Darnold just did, that's like, I think that's about as good as he can get. I don't know if he has another level. I think he's like that Baker guy where, like, he's not a 5,000 yard guy. Let's be real.
Yeah.
So, like, you've already seen what Darnold is capable of doing with Jefferson, and they win 15 games or 14 games, whatever it is. And he's the wide receiver 2 on the year. And that's only because Jamar Chase, like, just went off, and Burrow had a crazy year. Yeah. But anyways, like, when it comes to J.J. McCarthy, like, just trade this guy while nobody knows what he can do. I don't see McCarthy fitting in well with Minnesota or being able to, you know, give Justin Jefferson 1,500 yards.
I will say though, and I agree with you, you know, maybe trading on the potential of J.J. McCarthy, but if there's one person that could coach up someone like J.J. McCarthy, it is Kevin O'Connell.
Totally fair.
And I have full faith in Kevin O'Connell to coach him up.
Totally fair.
And you know, make him a real NFL quarterback.
I have no problem with that.
Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to round it out with our wide receiver 1. No man I'd rather talk about more than Jamar Chase. Drafted as the wide receiver 4, finishes as the wide receiver 1. 403 fantasy points, 127 receptions on 175 targets. You know, just like Garrett Wilson, but, you know, he gives you 1,708 yards receiving, 17 touchdowns. The man had the triple crown in receptions, yards, and touchdowns. 9.8 yards per target, 9.76, 13.4 yards per catch, and an 8 out of 17 or 8.7. First half of the year was the wide receiver 1, and second half of the year was a wide receiver 1. I'm gonna kick it to you. Will. Go ahead.
Yeah. First off, shout out to him. Career year on a contract year. Since he get ready to
That's
give
how
him
you do it.
a blank check and a pen, and you don't care what he writes down because you give him it.
Yes. That is literally the quintessential bet on yourself, and just like you have right here, back up the Brinks truck, man. Like, that's phenomenal.
4 games of 25 plus fantasy points, 3 with 35 plus. Like you don't see that. You don't see that every year. 36 red zone targets. I mean, he had 17 touchdowns. You're gonna expect regression with that. But if there's anybody who isn't gonna regress, it's him.
Right.
So yeah, Cincy, give him all the money. Again, I think he's untouchable, but we've seen him, traded and what we just mentioned.
Yeah.
And his contract, he's gonna get a lot of money. So that we've talked about Higgins and where he could possibly go.
That's honestly the one thing I'm concerned about because you really see Chase become is that alpha dog that nobody can touch when he's opposite to Higgins.
Yeah, we haven't seen him without Higgins. Well, I mean, besides the game he misses,
but he's not as alpha as he is, when he has Higgins. So, that's going to be the biggest question mark for Cincinnati going into the offseason is, can you get Higgins and Chase back together? Now, you could always franchise one of them, which they're not going to like.
Nope.
But can you tightrope your way and sign both Higgins and Chase so that you have those 2 elite receivers with Burrow for years to come?
Burrow's been very vocal recently of how, I think somebody asked him point blank, how are these teams winning Super Bowls? And he's like, you pay the guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know what their money situation is. It's going to be a lot of money. If you're Cincy, you love to see Higgins come back because you want to keep Chase and Higgins, that trio together as long as you can.
But I do think, obviously we're talking, outside of fantasy football, but I do think that, Cincinnati's probably going to prioritize their defense because that was a Achilles heel for them.
Absolutely.
Obviously they were, flaming hot the second half of the year. But first half of the year and even in some of those games in the second half, their defense was the reason why they lost those games. So I wonder as a franchise, do they, prioritize that? And then, T. Higgins is a casualty, from that.
Yeah, I think it's probably leaning towards T. Higgins being the odd man out. But as long as you got Chase and Burrow together, you're happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up episode 5 of the Fourth and Fantasy podcast. Again, keep giving those plays on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Check us out on YouTube. You get a video format just like you're seeing here today for the folks. Show us a lot of love on socials, Twitter at Fourth and Fantasy Pod, Instagram and TikTok at Fourth and Fantasy. We give you a lot of clips and please, ladies and gentlemen, just like we did at the beginning of the show, drop some comments.
That was a lot of fun.
We love to see that. We love to talk about that, how your rosters are being constructed. And, if we can help you in any way we can, we'd love to do that.
Absolutely. Keep showing the love. We appreciate it all.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you take care.
See ya.